Inheritance. When he first brought Beatrice to the family estate, it felt like paradise. They had just married, and the future shone before them with an unclouded light. The grand mansion, antique furniture, the scent of wood, and something elusive yet familiar. All of it filled them with happiness. This was where his childhood had passed. This was where he had visited his grandfather, a stern but just man who had left him not only the family home, but an entire empire of automobile factories. The first 2 months in the new house were filled with joy. Thomas and Beatrice savored every moment. Long walks in the garden, candle-lit dinners, laughter echoing through the spacious rooms. She was affectionate, her eyes sparkled with joy, and her smile held no trace of pretense. Thomas felt like the happiest man alive. But then everything changed. Beatrice started staying out late. At first, he didn't pay much attention. Work, meetings, charity dinners. He himself was deeply involved in business, but unease began to grow. The forbidden room. That day, Beatrice was absent once again. Thomas sat at his laptop, torn between reports and boredom. When he suddenly felt a strange restlessness, he got up, deciding to stretch his legs, and wandered through the house. In the far wing, in the neglected part of the mansion, he discovered a door that, as far as he remembered, wasn't on the house's blueprint. The lock didn't give way immediately. Thomas yanked at the handle several times, but it wouldn't budge. Then, driven by a strange premonition, he reached into his pocket for a pocket knife and wedged it into the keyhole, pressing forcefully. A hoarse creak sounded, as if the house itself resisted having its secrets uncovered. The lock crunched, and the door slowly creaked open, releasing a breath of stale air. The room greeted him with silence and darkness. The scent of dust, dampness, and something long forgotten hit his nose, making him grimace. The dim light from the hallway barely penetrated inside, casting long shadows on the floor, while the corners were swallowed by darkness as deep as a bottomless well. Thomas took a cautious step. The floorboards groaned under his weight, and the echo of his footsteps spread through the room as if awakening it from slumber. Suddenly, barely perceptible, yet eerily familiar, a sound. Something stirred in the corner, as if time itself had decided to remind him of its presence. Muffled, barely audible notes of an old music box. Thomas froze. His heart pounded in his chest, and an icy chill ran down his spine. The melody was childish, yet something in its simple notes was unsettling, wrong. He knew this tune. He stepped closer, and for a moment, the shadows wavered as if the walls were breathing with him. The music box sat on an old dust-covered table, small, carved, with a faded pattern on the lid. Thomas reached out, ran his fingers over the cold wood, and felt something stir inside him. Like a fragment of the past he didn't remember had suddenly awakened. He had to open it. The box seemed familiar. He leaned in, traced its lid with his fingers, and suddenly a cold sweat broke out on his skin. Something inside told him he had to open it. Overcoming his fear, he pressed the hidden mechanism and pulled out a secret compartment. Inside lay a letter. Thomas picked it up, unfolded the paper. Inside, only a few words. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., the restaurant on East Street. Fear gripped him. How old was this letter? Who was it meant for? He took it with him, returned to his study, working late into the night. Beatrice never came home. Later, glancing at the letter under the desk lamp, he noticed a familiar perforation on the paper. It was the logo of his company. Terror pierced through him. Who had sent this letter? And why was it in the house he owned? The meeting. The next day, Thomas barely finished his work before heading to the restaurant. He parked in an alley, away from the main entrance, as if some inner voice urged him to stay in the shadows. He watched the entrance, his heart gripped by panic. Beatrice and a man. Tall, confident, unfamiliar. In the uncertain glow of streetlights, he seemed eerily familiar, like a figure from a half-forgotten nightmare. The man leaned in, whispered something in her ear, and she smiled. That same smile Thomas had thought was his alone. He froze, his inner world shattering, leaving only a hollow, cold fear. The man placed his hand on her shoulder, lightly, casually, as if she had always belonged to him. They stepped inside, leaving Thomas alone in the dark. Thomas didn't go in. He stood in the shadows, watching his life crumble, like thin ice cracking beneath his feet. It felt as if someone had ripped his heart out and clenched it in icy fingers. Every word, every smile, every kiss. It had all been a lie. His breath turned ragged. His throat tightened as if an invisible hand was strangling him, keeping him from screaming. He wanted to rush in, rip off her false mask, demand answers. But instead he just clenched his fists and stepped back. A sudden chilling realization dawned upon him. The Thomas he once was no longer existed. The second letter. The drive home stretched into eternity. Thomas drove mechanically, oblivious to oncoming headlights or streetlights. Snatches of conversation echoed in his mind. Beatrice's treacherous smile, the touch of another man's hand on her shoulder. His heart pounded in a broken, erratic rhythm, his fingers gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Upon reaching home, he stepped out of the car slowly, leaving the hallway light off. Everything felt alien, as if he had entered a stranger's house. His quiet steps echoed through the vast rooms. And then, like a silent summons, he remembered the music box. It waited for him in its place, unchanged, like a lingering memory. He approached, opened the lid with trembling fingers, and inside lay a new envelope. Now you believe me. Her lover is not just some random man. They've been together for 5 years. Your marriage was their plan. Tonight at midnight, they will stage your accidental fall down the stairs. You must stop it at any cost. Thomas froze. Ice ran through his veins. He closed the letter, slowly stood up, and walked into the living room. His footsteps thundered in the silence of the house, like echoes of shattered illusions. Sitting in the chair, he felt the cold weariness envelop his body. He wasn't just waiting. He was reliving every second, remembering every lie, every smile, every promise that now meant nothing. His eyes flicked to the clock. Time crawled painfully slow. The fall. The night stretched endlessly. Beatrice returned at midnight, moving quietly, as if afraid to wake the ghosts of the past. She didn't know he had seen everything. She didn't know he was watching her from the shadows. Thomas led her into the living room, his eyes dark, burning with quiet fire. Tonight, everything would change. "Come to me, dear," he said. His voice was oddly calm. She smiled, but in her eyes flickered something almost imperceptible. Anxiety, or perhaps realization. He waited. The moment stretched taut like a wire. His fingers curled into a fist. His heart pounded, drowning out the sound of her footsteps. "You haven't slept, have you?" she asked softly. "No," he replied. "Let's go upstairs." She hesitated but obeyed, climbing the stairs first. He followed, knowing that in a few seconds it would all be over. One more step, one more movement, and he would push her down first. But at the last moment, something changed. She turned suddenly, and before he could react, a sharp push sent him backward. The world spun. Thomas tumbled down, the air ripping a scream from his lungs, steps bruising his body until he crashed onto the cold floor, a sickening crunch of bones, ceiling blurred, then nothing. Darkness. The final letter. Beatrice sobbed. The man beside her embraced her. It went perfectly. he whispered. "The inheritance is ours now. The bank transferred the money. It's over." Beatrice opened her mouth to reply, but then she turned pale. In the living room, something played. The music box. She turned slowly. The man tightened his grip on her hand. The box kept playing, and beside it on the table lay an envelope. With trembling fingers, Beatrice tore it open. Inside was only one sentence. "Do you hear the music? It plays for you."